Rian was the kind of boy most people walked past without noticing. On the dusty mining colony of Veron 6, everyone was busy with survival, not stories. Life there was simple, harsh, and predictable. People worked, people slept, and people hoped the next day would not crush them more than the last. But Rian, he had something unusual, a grin. Not a perfect smile, not a shining heroic look, just a small lopsided grin that lifted slightly more on one side. It made him look playful, stubborn, and strangely alive even when everything around him felt dead. To others it was strange, even annoying. To him, it was his way of saying, "I'm still here." He worked in the repair shed, fixing small machines that broke down every week. Mining tools, dusty scanners, worn-out thrusters, anything the colony needed to keep running. He was good with hands but bad with confidence. He didn't think he was special. He didn't think he was strong. He didn't think he mattered. But whenever someone insulted him or life kicked him down, he simply grinned, a quiet, stubborn grin. A human refusal to surrender. One evening, the landscape of Veron 6 glowed orange from the sands whipping through the air. Workers were heading home, exhausted as always. Rian wiped sweat from his face and locked up the shed. He planned to go home, eat something simple, and sleep early. That was when he heard the roar. The ground trembled beneath his feet. The sky flashed with a streak of silver like a giant blade slicing through the clouds. People ran out of their homes, dropping tools, screaming for their children. Sky descended a massive ship, sleek, silver, powerful, and marked with glowing blue symbols. It was not human. It was not from any mining corporation. It was something rare. Something legendary. A Zalirian vessel. The ship hovered for a moment, casting a long shadow over the colony. Then it landed slowly, dust swirling in a violet ring around it. No one dared move. No one dared speak. The colony had never seen an alien ship land here. They were too unimportant. Too small. Rian stood frozen in the front row, heart pounding but face still wearing that tiny crooked grin, not out of bravery, but out of pure confusion and fear. The ship's ramp opened with a deep hiss. And out stepped a tall woman, an alien but strangely human-like in shape. Her skin glowed faintly, her eyes sharp like polished metal, her armor shining like liquid silver. She walked with a confidence that made even the toughest miners step back. This was Commander Solara of the Zalirian Guard, a name whispered throughout the galaxy. She scanned the crowd, one by one. Slowly, carefully, people trembled. Some straightened their backs, trying to appear strong. Others hid their children behind them. Rian simply stood still, dust in his hair, hands dirty from work, clothes worn out. And that weird crooked grin still on his face. Solara's gaze passed over everyone. Then it stopped on him. Rian's heart skipped. He felt like a target caught in a spotlight. Why him? Why look at him when so many here were stronger, smarter, more impressive? The commander walked forward. Every step echoed like a drum. She ignored the muscular miners. She ignored the decorated engineer. She ignored the colony leader himself. She walked straight toward Rian. The entire colony stared. Rian swallowed hard. His legs shook. His palms were sweaty. But that nervous grin was still there, stuck on his face like it refused to leave. Solara stood right in front of him, towering, elegant, dangerous. She raised a finger and pointed directly at him. "You," she said. Her voice was calm but powerful. "You will come with us." The crowd exploded in whispers. Why him? He's just a mechanic. He's nobody. Rian's voice trembled. Me? Why me?" Commander Solara didn't blink. Didn't hesitate. She simply answered in a soft, mysterious tone. "Because your grin is." She did not finish the sentence. But the meaning hung in the air like something electric. Rian didn't understand. No one did. But in that moment, without warning, his ordinary life ended. And something extraordinary began. The colony was still buzzing with shock. People stared at Rian as if he had suddenly grown wings or turned into a monster. The strongest miners whispered angrily. The engineers shook their heads. Mothers pulled their children closer, unsure if the aliens choosing Rian meant danger or something far stranger. Rian stood frozen, his mind blank. Only one question swirled inside him. Why me? Commander Solara didn't seem affected by the chaos around them. She stood tall, her silver armor catching the last rays of the dusty sunset. Her expression remained unreadable, calm, focused, almost cold. But her eyes, they were locked on Rian with a strange intensity. Rian swallowed hard. "Commander, I don't understand." "You don't need to," she said. "You only need to come." The colony leader, an older man named Harvin, stepped forward quickly, bowing with desperate respect. Commander, forgive me, but there must be some mistake. This boy, he is not trained, not skilled, not worthy. Solara finished his sentence, her tone dangerously quiet. Harvin froze. I only meant that our colony has better candidates. She said nothing. Instead, she turned to look at the volunteers forming a line. Muscular miners, tall guards, engineers with shining tools. They looked like a wall of confidence. Solara observed them for a moment and then looked back at Rian. That one, she said, pointing at him again, is the one I choose. Rian felt heat rise in his cheeks. He wasn't used to being looked at, let alone being chosen. The crowd's eyes burned into him like flames. A miner named Torak, a giant of a man with thick arms and a heavy voice, stepped forward. Commander, pick me instead. I'm stronger, faster. I can actually help you. Solara tilted her head slightly. I do not seek strength. Another miner spoke up. Then choose me. I've fought beasts twice my size. I can protect your ship. I do not seek fighters. Then an engineer raised her hand. I know every machine in this colony. I can fix anything. Solara shook her head. I do not seek knowledge. Rian felt his chest tighten. If she did not want strength, if she did not want fighters, if she did not want intelligence, then what did she want? He whispered, Commander. Why me? Solara stepped closer. The dust around them settled as if afraid to move. Her voice softened, just a little. When you saw my ship, you did not hide, she said. You did not puff your chest, pretend to be brave, or attempt to impress me. Rian blinked. I didn't do anything. Exactly, she replied. You were honest, you were afraid but still standing. And that grin, her eyes narrowed slightly. That strange little grin you carry, it tells me something. Rian frowned. What does it tell you? That you endure, she said. Even when the world is heavy. The crowd fell silent. Rian looked at his feet. That grin wasn't special, it wasn't brave. It was just something he did when he was nervous or confused. He never imagined it could be a reason anyone, let alone an alien commander, would choose him for anything. Torak spat angrily in the dust. So you're choosing him because he smiles weird? Solara turned her cold gaze toward him. No, I choose him because he does not break. The words struck Rian like a shock. Not break? He had broken many times inside. But somehow he always kept going. Maybe she saw something in him he never saw in himself. Solara stepped back and extended a hand toward him. Rian of Varan 6, she said, her voice echoing across the silent colony. You will board my ship. Rian's hands trembled. His legs felt weak. He looked at the crowd, people he had known all his life. Some looked angry, some jealous, some confused. But one thing was clear. No one understood that, not even Rian. His heart pounded violently as he took a tiny step forward. Just one step, then another. He reached Solara's side, still unsure, still afraid. Still wearing that crooked grin, now smaller, now shaking. As the aliens guided him toward the ship, the colony watched in a mix of disbelief and quiet awe. The last thing he saw before the ramp closed was a little girl waving at him, smiling softly as if she believed in him even when he didn't believe in himself. And then the door sealed shut. Rian's old life ended behind him. Whatever waited in the stars had already begun. The alien ship was nothing like Rian had ever imagined. Its walls glowed with a soft pale light, pulsing like it had a heartbeat of its own. Floors were smooth and almost weightless under his feet. Strange machines floated in the air, making quiet hums that seemed to whisper secrets he could not understand. Holographic panels blinked in colors he did not have names for. Everywhere he looked, the ship felt alive, intelligent, organized, and terrifying. Rian's heart hammered in his chest. He had always known the universe was bigger than his small colony, but standing here, inside this massive Silurian vessel, it hit him with the force of a star. The air smelled metallic, clean, and somehow alive. He felt like an ant in a world of giants. And for the first time in his life, he realized just how small he truly was. Commander Solara walked ahead of him, graceful and unshakable. Every crew member he passed, tall, silver-skinned, armed, looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and doubt. Murmurs followed him wherever he went. That is the human? One whispered, he looks fragile, another said. Too small for what we face, a third muttered. Rian's palms grew sweaty. He wanted to disappear. He wanted to turn back. But somehow the grip of his own grin held him steady, a little crooked, trembling, but still there. Do not worry about what they think, Solara said without turning. Her voice was calm, almost soothing, but carried the weight of command. The galaxy does not choose strength alone. It chooses resilience. Rian frowned. He did not understand. Resilience? He asked. I'm just a mechanic. I've fixed broken machines and small engines. I'm not strong like them. I don't belong here. She paused and turned to face him, her eyes scanning him as if reading something deep inside. You will belong, she said softly. Humans are not strong in the ways we expect. You endure, you continue, you hope. That is what makes you dangerous to the darkness. Rian blinked. Hope? His voice cracked. What use is hope in the middle of a war? I've never even fought before. I've never left my colony. How? Can I matter? Solara's gaze softened slightly, though it did not lose its intensity. The Malakar are coming. They will devour worlds without hesitation. We need warriors, yes, but warriors can break. We need humans like you. You have the courage to stand when all else fails. You smile when there is nothing to smile about. Rian's chest tightened. He glanced down at his hands, still dirty from his work in the colony. His grin felt silly now, almost childish, but she had noticed it. She had seen something in it he could never explain. He took a deep breath, trying to make sense of the storm of emotions in his chest: fear, doubt, shame, and a strange flicker of pride. The other humans in the galaxy, the ones he had read about in history stories, were heroes or soldiers. Not him, but she. She had chosen him. The hum of the ship grew louder as they moved toward the observation deck. Rian pressed his forehead against the cool glass and stared at the stars. For the first time, he saw the galaxy as it truly was: vast, beautiful, and dangerous. It stretched endlessly, glittering like diamonds, but hiding shadows darker than night. Solara's voice broke through his thoughts. You will not be alone. You will not be expected to carry this alone. But you will be the reminder that life persists. Even when the galaxy trembles, even when hope dies, humans endure. Rian swallowed. He had never thought of himself as important. He had never imagined that a crooked grin and a stubborn heart could matter beyond his small colony. Yet, here he was chosen to stand against something that could consume worlds. The crew continued to watch him, skepticism and uncertainty still lingering in their eyes. But something had shifted. Maybe it was the way he stood there, small and trembling, yet not fleeing. Maybe it was the quiet defiance in his grin. Something about him spoke of strength they could not measure with weapons or armor. Rian looked back at Solara. Her presence was unwavering, commanding, but there was a hint of trust in her eyes. That trust, it terrified him more than the Malakar ever could. He was being counted on, and he had no idea if he could meet that expectation. But as the stars streaked past, as the ship dove deeper into space, something inside him stirred. A small, stubborn flame of determination. He could not promise victory, he could not promise heroism, but he could promise not to break. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. Days passed aboard the Zilirian ship, but Rian felt as if time had no meaning. The stars outstreaked by endlessly, and the ship moved silently through the void. Each day, he learned more about the crew, the machines, and the strange language of the Zilirians. Yet every lesson only reminded him of one thing: he was not like them. He was small, untrained, fragile. He spent hours in the observation deck, staring into the black sea of space. The universe looked beautiful and cruel, all at once. And then the warning lights began to flash. A red glow swept across the hull, accompanied by a low hum that made Rian's chest tighten. Alarms blared, echoing through the ship like a storm in a canyon. Crew members rushed past him, giving orders in the alien tongue, their voices sharp and urgent. The holographic displays flickered, revealing a vision that froze Rian in place. Hundreds of shadowy ships, moving with terrifying speed, converging on them like a living swarm. The Malakar, Solara said, her voice steady even as the crew panicked. Rian had learned the name in hushed whispers. The Malakar were creatures without empathy, without mercy, without fear. They consumed everything in their path. Entire worlds disappeared under their attack. And now, here they were. Rian's stomach turned. He pressed his hands to the glass, trying to imagine how small his world seemed compared to the massive fleet before them. The Malakar ships moved like shadows given life, dark shapes that swallowed the light from distant stars. Commander, Rian's voice trembled, we can't fight them. There's too many. Solara did not look at him. She was already giving orders, her movements precise, her presence commanding. Do not underestimate them, she said calmly. But do not underestimate yourselves either. Rian swallowed hard. He wanted to step back. He wanted to hide. He wanted to go back to the repair shed in his dusty colony, where life was simple, predictable, and safe. But he couldn't, not anymore. The decision had been made, and he had been chosen. The other crew members were shouting, arguing, and preparing weapons, but one thing was clear: many of them doubted him. He was a human among giants, unarmed in a war that could end everything. The whispers followed him. That is the human? He's too small. What can he do? Rian's fingers tightened into fists. He felt the familiar heat rise in his chest, the mix of fear and stubbornness he always carried. That lopsided grin of his, the one that had made him laugh at small victories, the one that had carried him through lonely nights, appeared on his face almost without thinking. Solara's eyes found his, and for a moment, everything stopped. No alarms, no engines, no shadows outside. Just the human boy, trembling, yet standing. "You are afraid," she said softly. "Good. Courage is meaningless without fear. Let it guide you." Rian's breath hitched. He did not feel courageous. He felt terrified. He felt inadequate. He felt tiny. But he could not deny the strange warmth spreading through him, a spark of determination he had never known he possessed. The Malakar were approaching fast. Their shadows pressed closer, and their hum grew into a roar that shook the hull. The Zilurian fleet responded with laser bursts and shields, but already, several ships were gone, devoured in seconds. Rian stepped back from the glass, hands shaking. He was not a warrior. He had no weapons, no armor, no skills for battle. And yet, the crew were looking at him, waiting for him to do something, anything that could keep them from despair. "Tell them," he whispered to himself, almost too quiet to hear. "To fight. To keep going," Solara noticed. She tilted her head slightly, almost smiling. "Do it," she commanded. Rian's voice shook as he raised it, speaking across the fleet's communication channel. "Listen to me," he shouted. "I don't know if I'm brave. I don't know if I'm strong. But I know one thing: humans don't quit. We keep standing when everything falls apart. We keep fighting when there's no hope. You can do the same." He saw their heads lift, the doubt in their eyes faltering. His words were not powerful, not heroic, but they were human. Real. And in that moment, something began to change. The Malakar did not slow. But the human voice, small and trembling, cut through the darkness like a spark in a black void. Hope, fragile and stubborn, had arrived. Rian's grin widened. It was still lopsided, still imperfect, still trembling. But it burned brighter than any star. Even in the face of shadows, even in the face of death, he would not break. And somehow, that was enough. The battle had begun in full. The Malakar ships moved like shadows with teeth, tearing through the Zilurian fleet faster than anyone had predicted. Explosions lit up the void, each flash a reminder of how fragile life was against such darkness. Alarm sirens screamed through the corridors of the flagship. Crew members shouted, ran, and scrambled to their stations, their fear visible even to someone like Rian, who had only just begun to understand courage. Rian fell to his knees as the ship shook violently. Sparks rained down around him, and the smell of burning metal filled the air. He pressed his hands over his ears, trying to block out the chaos, but the screams, the alarms, and the crashing of machinery invaded every thought. Somewhere, deep in the ship, Solara's voice cut through the chaos. "Stay with me," she commanded, rushing past falling debris to grab his arm. Her grip was firm and unyielding. "We cannot fall. Not now." Rian looked around at the devastation. Every face he saw was tense, afraid, fighting against the panic threatening to overwhelm them. Even the strongest Zilurian warriors, with their shining armor and powerful weapons, faltered in the terror of the Malakar swarm. For a moment, Rian wanted to collapse. He wanted to admit he was too small, too weak, too insignificant. He wanted to hide behind a wall and disappear into the shadows of the ship. But then he saw the bridge, the fleet, the hundreds of ships counting on them to survive. And for the first time, he felt a strange, growing fire deep inside his chest. That he remembered Solara's words: "Courage is meaningless without fear." And he realized, fear did not make him weak. Fear made him human. Rian stumbled to his feet, shaking, trembling, but standing. His lopsided grin, small and awkward, spread across his face without thought. It was nervous, yes, but defiant. It was a grin that refused to bow. He took a deep breath and raised his voice across the ship's communication channel. "Listen to me," he shouted. "I don't know if I'm a hero. I don't know if I'm brave. But I do know this: humans fight even when we're scared. We stand even when we're bleeding. We hope even when there's no reason. You can do the same." The crew stopped, hesitated, and then something remarkable happened. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, they steadied. The trembling hands gripped weapons tighter. The fearful faces straightened. The panicked shouts softened into determined commands. Rian didn't stop. He spoke louder now, his voice carrying across the chaos. Do not give up. Not today. We have each other. We have life. Stand, fight, live. The Malachar ships did not retreat. They came closer, darker and larger, devouring light with every movement. But Rian's words, fragile as they were, began to ripple across the fleet. The Zillyrians were no longer panicked. They moved with purpose, with direction, with hope, a feeling they had not expected from a human boy. Solara watched him, eyes wide with disbelief. She had chosen him because of a grin, and now she saw the truth. That grin was more than stubbornness. It was defiance in the face of annihilation. It was courage that did not come from strength or skill, but from refusing to break. Rian's voice continued to rise, trembling but strong. We are not alone. We are not finished. Fight for every world, every life, every soul that cannot fight for itself. Stand with me. The fleet responded. Shining Zillyrian shields lit up the void. Weapons fired with renewed precision. Even ships that had been faltering now moved with cohesion, unity, and courage. And in the middle of it all, Rian grinned. Not because he felt brave, but because he realized something. Sometimes, the smallest spark is enough to light the darkest night. The Malachar advanced. Shadows pressed against them, hungry and merciless. But for the first time, they encountered resistance not from force, but from spirit. Rian had not fought with guns or armor. He had fought with something far stronger, hope. And in that moment, the tide began to turn, even in fear. Even in chaos. Even in the face of death, one human had refused to break, and that was enough to begin the impossible. The battle raged on, but something extraordinary had begun. The Malachar ships, dark and relentless, had met a resistance they had never expected. It was not the brilliance of weapons or the strength of armor that challenged them, it was hope. And that hope had a face. A small, trembling human face with a crooked grin. Rian stood on the bridge, heart pounding, hands gripping the rail as explosions shook the ship. Around him, Zillyrian warriors moved with renewed energy, their fear replaced by determination. He could see it in their eyes. They were no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting for life itself, and that spark had come from him. He took a shaky breath and raised his voice across the fleet's communications channels again. Listen to me. I am not a hero. I am not strong. I am scared. But I will not stop standing, and neither should you. Fight. Stand. Hope. Do not let the darkness win. His words echoed across the void, reaching every ship that could hear. The soldiers, engineers, and crew all paused, and for a moment, the universe seemed to listen. They saw a human boy, small and fragile, trembling but defiant, refusing to bow to the shadow of annihilation. The Malachar ships pressed harder, striking with deadly precision. One Zillyrian cruiser exploded in a flash of light, sending debris scattering across the void. The sound of alarms and screams filled the ship, but Rian did not flinch. The fire inside him had grown into a flame. A strange, unstoppable courage. Humans don't give up. He shouted again, louder this time, almost hoarse. We fight even when it's hopeless. We hope even when all seems lost. If I can stand, if I can keep smiling, so can you. And they did, across the fleet. The tide began to turn, not because of weapons, not because of training, not because of strategy, but because of something far stronger, the courage of a single human who refused to break. Ships that had faltered earlier now moved with precision. Crews that had panicked regained their focus. Even the strongest Zillyrian warriors fought with a rhythm they had not known before. Rian watched, astonished. He was only a human boy. He did not belong here. And yet, somehow he was making a difference. He had no experience, no skill in combat, no legendary training. All he had was a simple grin, a stubborn heart, and the refusal to give up. Solara approached him quietly, her presence calm, yet commanding. You are extraordinary, she said, her voice softer than usual. You have reminded them of something they had forgotten. Hope is stronger than fear. Rian shook his head, breath uneven. I'm just a boy from Varan 6, I fix machines. I don't know how to fight. I didn't do anything special. I'm scared, terrified. I'm not like you. Solara smiled, faint and genuine. You are more like us than you think. Strength is not measured in arms or size. It is measured in spirit. And your spirit is unbreakable. Rian felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. For the first time, someone believed in him. Not because he was strong. Not because he was clever. Not because he had skill. But because he had not surrendered. The Malachar ships hesitated. For a moment, their relentless advance faltered as if the spark of human courage in the middle of the Zilirian fleet had created a force they could not calculate. The tide was shifting. Slowly, carefully, the Malachar began to retreat, driven back not by firepower, but by the defiance of life itself. Rian's grin widened, crooked and imperfect, but full of determination. Around him, the fleet rallied. Zilirians cheered, humans whispered prayers, and even the smallest crew members found strength they didn't know existed. In that moment, Rian realized the truth of what Solara had chosen him for. He had not been picked for strength. He had not been picked for skill. He had been picked for courage, for hope, for the human gift that no machine, no weapon, no alien technology could replicate, the refusal to break in the face of impossible odds, and in his simple, stubborn grin. The galaxy saw it. Hope was alive. And humanity small, fragile. Ordinary humanity had reminded the universe why it should never be underestimated. Rian breathed deeply. His heart still pounding, but his spirit stronger than ever. He had not fought with strength, but he had fought with everything he had. He had inspired a fleet. He had faced annihilation. And he had not broken. Even in the darkness, even in the shadow of death, one human boy had refused to surrender. And that refusal would echo across the stars forever.